So, Wayne Hawthorne, something new and interesting happened to me last week. I did my first ever streaming only mix. And my guess is that you've been hearing this from a lot of people recently because so much of our live events have been converted into streaming events. So, in this case, my event went to Zoom. And then the next day, I did another event that just went to YouTube. I realized that although I could hear, this return from the streaming PC that was going out to these places, it really made me wonder, like, what does this sound like for everyone else listening on their laptops, in their cars, in their earbuds? And is there anything I can do to kind of make this more consistent or figure out what they're hearing and create a more consistent experience for everyone who's listening on the other end? How do I help my mix translate to all of these different destinations?
Yeah, I got you. And your story is very familiar. There's a lot of people feeling the way through this. And to be honest, when I started doing stuff with Loudness, I went through the exact same issues. One quick answer to your question is you never 100% know how it fully sounds out there. However, there's a few tools you can use in the toolbox to kind of give you a good feel for what it should be like on most systems out there. And in this streaming environment, that's kind of the best we can hope for. Use the tools, and it gives you a really good feel of what the world is seeing out there. And it actually works.
I know that one of those tools you're going to be talking about at this upcoming Live Sound Summit, where you will be giving a presentation, is loudness metering. So Can you just give me an overview of what is the tool and how does it help me?
Really, there's two tools that I use exclusively, bus compression and a loudness meter. Now, people have heard of these things called LUFS or LKFS, and they've seen now that all the streaming media, YouTube, Spotify, Tidal, they all have some sort of number of, you should be aiming for X LUFS, minus 14 LUFS, minus 16 LUFS. But what does that mean? So one thing I'll be talking about is trying to put that into context especially for people who've done a lot of front of house mixing, trying to put into context on what that means from what you're used to seeing on your console, working on a PA. Well, just tweaking that a little bit and moving it towards the streaming platforms and understanding what those LUF terms actually mean and how to read the loudness meter so that you do have a good idea of what's happening out on your stream.
I haven't met with you or taken a class with you before, so I'm just curious, like, what do you know about LUFs? Like, why should I listen to you about mixed translation?
It's a valid question.
I see that it looks like you're sitting in some kind of a mix or broadcast truck. So already I'm leaning towards trusting you, but tell me a little bit about your journey with learning this stuff.
I literally came at it honestly. I come from a background of both electrical engineering as well as live production. Worked on many stages. I've worked front of house. I've worked monitors. I've done freelance. I've worked for different production companies and venues. So I get that side of things. I got into this side of things because with a partner, I built and owned a mobile production company. We started that way back in 2005 timeframe. And what you see in the background is the interior of a production truck that we built. In that, we get hired by broadcasters, and we literally traveled all over the country providing shows. And because we do live to air broadcasts, we then have to start paying attention to loudness. I won't go to the details, but when you're broadcasting on terrestrial TV, there's some very specific requirements, and I'll talk a little bit about this during the summit, but there are some very specific requirements that we all have to adhere to in terms of how loud something sounds. Mm-hmm. And so over my time running the mobile and providing music mixes for TV broadcasters, whether it be sports or music events, etc., over my time, I've gotten very familiar with loudness specs, and I've come up with a few methodologies on even though we're rushing into a show, load in, quick sound check, and going live to air, I've come up with a few methodologies that kind of helped me hit the targets, but still sound musical. And that's because I come from a music background, like most of us. I still want things sounding good.
Yeah.
Still want things, you don't want things sounding squashed and overcompressed within an inch of its life. Unfortunately, with some of these requirements, we do have to be compressing a little bit more than we would for a standard music PA system. Mm-hmm. So how do we adapt those? And again, that to answer your question, that's how I kind of came into this. And so this has been well before pandemic days. And then as the pandemic has moved along, I'm listening to streams that people putting out there. Some are fantastic, and some I can actually literally hear they're going through the exact same problems I went through a bunch of years ago when I was learning all of this.
That's so funny. You're hearing you in the past. Your
that's
mixes
exactly
from the past.
Yeah. There's some things that we naturally do as particularly front of house mixers. There's some things that we do that make sense in a context of a big ass PA. Sorry, can I say that? I mean, in front of it. When you're in front of a PA and you've got 15,000 people around you, there's some things you naturally do as a front of house mixer. It makes sense.
Sure.
If you do those same things on a stream, especially if your audience has some video content tied to it, if you do those on the streams, all of a sudden they don't make as much sense because your audience doesn't have the same context as what your audience would if they were in the space with you. And so we have to think about that a little bit differently than we would on a normal stream, or excuse me, on a normal PA, live PA.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, it's not just me. There are some different things to learn. And so that's great. I'm really looking forward to your talk at the Live Sound Summit because there's a lot I need to learn, and maybe you can help me save some time and some embarrassing mistakes. Maybe I can take your mixes, your Wayne Hawthorne mixes from 20 years ago, and you can tell me what not to do.
You may not want to take 20 years ago because, little hint, that gated snare from Phil Collins' 80s, I still use that. Come on, So we have our things, but one thing we'll talk about in the summit is I'm not going to change how you mix. I'm just going to suggest a couple things to tweak, but everybody has a way that they've learned how to mix and works for them. We're going to stay with that. We're just going to tweak some methodologies so that it makes your life a little easier and consistent when it comes to you delivering your streams.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, if you would like to hear Wayne Hawthorne talk more about translating your mix to many streaming platforms, that will be on June 13th for this year's Live Sound Summit 2021. And you can sign up for that over at Live Sound Summit 2021.sounddesignlive.com. And we hope you'll join us. So Wayne Hawthorne, thank you so much for being here. And I'm looking forward to seeing you at the summit.
I'm looking forward to being there. This will be a fantastic time.